If I saw a fantastic band and met them and didn't like them, I wouldn't sign them. We did sign a 2-album deal with a major right at the end of our career, and it went horribly wrong within about 3 months. That's actually what artists want. You just want to get on and do it. And for years, it's just been, well, you can't do that. I'm like, yes, you can.
Hi, I'm Hazel Savage, and on today's podcast, I'll be interviewing former member of the Cocteau Twins and co-founder of Bella Union Records, Simon Raymonde. We'll be talking about following your instincts as an artist, what we're calling the great demo dilemma, and as an artist, how do you strike that balance between artistry and commerce? Thank you so much for joining me today, Simon. And
Pleasure.
I know who you are.
Yes.
But when you meet someone for the first time, how do you like to introduce yourself?
I usually say I'm a publisher or something like that I'm not. Because if you say, oh, you're a musician. Oh, what band were you in? Cocteau Twins. Sorry, pardon? You know what I mean? It sort of just often leads to sort of awkward silences.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so I just tend to just say something bland.
Nice.
Just to get it moving.
Yeah.
So, but that isn't what I do. I do run a record label and I am a musician.
There's an element of publishing because
I
maybe
guess.
the best lies have an ounce of truth in them.
Exactly, yes.
So that's how we lead in.
Indeed.
And actually, you and I met for the first time ever in New Zealand.
We did.
Do you remember going global
magical
conference?
trip that was.
Yeah.
Yeah, I still think about it.
It felt like they put together the best summer camp of people to hang out of all time.
Exactly, and there were no murders or nothing dangerous happened. Everyone got on brilliantly.
Exactly, yeah. And we were on the other side of the world, as far away as it's physically possible to be. Yeah,
I mean, I absolutely loved every minute of it, yeah. I'm still in close contact with a lot of those people too.
Nice, yeah, it was good times. So I did want to sort of jump in. I've got a lot of questions and a lot of things we could talk about. But I wanted to focus a little bit on the label, on Bella Union. So 27 years old.
That is correct.
And so I kind of wanted to go back to the initial ideation because you started it around the same time that you were also actively a musician. And not a lot of musicians 27 years ago had those kind of thoughts as, you know, they'd be like, I'm a musician, that's someone else's job. What made you kind of think I should be on the business side or I should be running both channels?
Yeah, and I mean, I never thought that, and it was never that fully
calculated.
realised. No, it was. We don't really like these people that we're signed to, so why don't we just do it ourselves? Because we can just sign ourselves to our own label. It's not very, you know what I mean? It's just not very difficult.
We're looking around to see who'd stop you and go, no, nobody would stop us.
We just have to make the record and put it out. We very naively thought it was a super simple kind of arrangement. So that's what we did, and then about 6 months after we did it, the band broke up. So we were like, oh, okay, because we only did it to release our own music. There was never actually any intention to release.
It wasn't
anyone else's
a big
music.
strategy.
No.
Yeah.
Oh no, never. I mean, I still don't have a strategy. How we got here 27 years later is still beyond me.
Yeah.
So at the time, it was merely a case of just the band broke up, and I was like, well, what am I going to do right now? We had this beautiful studio that we rented off Pete Townsend in Richmond, where we were making all our music, and it had become this sort of like community, like a sort of hive of activity. Friends of ours, bands would come in and record, like Beth Orton did her album there, and there were lots of things happening.
Yeah. Jesus
and Mary Chain came, like Hope Sandoval, all these wonderful people would come and make music in this studio.
Yeah.
So once the band had broken up, it was... I suppose we've started this label, so maybe we should just put something out and see what happens. And that's what we did.
Right.
And here we are.
And how were you making those early decisions? Was it the people that were coming into the studio, the connections, the friends of friends, the introductions?
A little bit. I mean, I think we played a festival at the Phoenix Festival in 1996.
Yeah.
One of the last things we did before we broke up. And it was the one that David Bowie played at. And 33 were on the bill. And we met them, and they heard that we had a label and asked if we'd be interested in putting their record out. So we were like, yeah, let's do that. Like with no idea about it, just the enthusiasm.
Yeah.
And that's what we did. And we put their record out, did really well. We put my solo record, which I'd been making in the last couple of years before the band broke up, that came out.
Yeah.
And then I signed an artist called John Grant from the band called The Czars. And of course, John Grant has become incredibly successful in the last sort of decade or so. But at the time, nobody knew who he was at all.
Right. And the way that the industry's changed as well, because, you know, I often tell people, like, my first ever job was I used to work at HMV. Worked at HMV in my hometown of Darlington, and then I got a transfer to the Oxford Street store. But so, of course, signing a band and putting music out back then was like, we're going to print up a bunch of CDs or cassettes and we're going to get them in record stores. So I could see how bands would go, great, you're in London, you're centralised, you're focused, it's the European market, which is so different to today, where those bands might decide to just self-release.
Yeah.
So when I talk about that change, how's that change been? And what part of it do you enjoy? Is it still the meeting of the artists, or is it, great, we can whack out 10 singles a week now if we wanted to?
I think that because I'm a musician first and a label second, I always think of, you know, I always enjoy the company of artists, producers. I like being in the studio, I like going to gigs. I like people in the music business. I do. I especially like artists.
Yeah.
And I think that's what attracted me to this role. And I've always had kind of confidence that in my own taste, it's quite broad. It's very broad, partly due to, like yourself, working in a record shop.
Yeah.
It was my first job, was working in the Beggars record shop in Earls Court in South Kensington. And that experience is actually why I'm here, that record shop. Because everybody I met in that shop became hugely influential in my life.
Right.
Meeting the Cocteau Twins in that shop, meeting the 4AD people above that shop.
Yeah.
So this whole community around the Beggars shop was where I spent a very important, formative couple of years. So that's still my main interest, like meeting people, helping the artists kind of. I've been doing this such a long time now. I'm 61, so I've been making music since I was 15. So I don't know what the math is there, but it's a lot of years.
We'll work it out. We'll
write it down later. So I feel like I might have a few tidbits to pass on to artists of a similar age to I was when I started. And I think that's helpful. Definitely.
But I think you're right as well. That whole artists are often the best people to hang out with because they're doing it for all the right reasons. You know, they often, if they love to play music and they love to be creative, that's very different to quite often who we might meet on the industry side of things.
It is, yeah, and hence thereby lies the problem that I've had. I've sort of come up against that brick wall sometimes of not understanding business and not understanding business people and why there's too many no's and not enough. Yeah, sure, we can try that. Because artists will try anything. In the studio, if that doesn't work, I'll pick up a pedal and try something else. Or if that piano doesn't work, I'll go and sit at the organ and try that. Or if you know what I mean, you're just always trying something. Business seemed always to me anyway quite rigid. Maybe it's not quite so much anymore. I think it's become a lot more open over the last few years, and that's probably why artists are now their lines are a bit blurred between record labels and artists, and now artists are feeling like, well, I mean, what do labels do? I can do that myself.
Right.
But there are a lot of people that feel that.
I suspect sometimes the labels are acting a bit like they're more fluid and they're more open to it, and sometimes they might just be pretending, but that's my personal opinion. But I also famously worked for Universal Music for just shy of a year before I was unceremoniously fired, because I just could not fit in there. Because I was a let's get it done. Yeah, I'm a startup person, so I'm let's build something, let's get it done, let's do this, let's do that. And the whole, I tried to film an interview with an artist and I hadn't got approval, and the head of PR screamed at me. And I got told to write a strategy for a piece of website software that I'd already been told we were not going to use. And I was like, well, I'm not wasting my time. That's busy work. Well, then I was fired. So there's, so I didn't last very long on the major label side.
No, that's understandable. I wouldn't either.
I was not popular.
As a band, we didn't either. We did sign a two album deal with a major at the end of our career, and it went horribly wrong within about 3 months. And we went from being like number one priority to who are these people? They're just so annoying, and they never answer the phone after that. So yeah, I totally get what you're saying.
Yeah, and I've personally found a great love on the tech side of the business, because I find tech people I can understand. They're usually very passionate about what they're doing. They have a real love for the intricacies of the technology, and they often just want what's best. What works from a technology perspective? What benefits people? And what do I want to do? The tech people are driven by those things. They're not driven by, well, who'll see me at that event? Who'll think I'm cool? Has that person approved of me? Does this person like me? Do I get to shut someone else out?
Well, I wish the artist world was more like that, because I think there's actually a lot more in common between artists and the tech nerds, if you want to call them that, than people imagine.
Yeah.
Because you just want to get things done, have ideas and put them into action. That's actually what artists want to do. But they've been sort of programmed to be hit by all these negatives, and there's always a stumbling block. Oh, you can't do that. Oh,
yeah,
you know what I mean? It's like, you just want to get on and do it. And for years, it's just been, well, you can't do that.
Yeah.
I'm like, yes, you can.
Well, I've spoken to artists as well who they might want to put out a high volume of content. They're coming up with ideas and singles all the time. And I see this especially at SoundCloud, because you can just upload anything you like and try it and see if people like it. And if they don't, take it down, swap it out. But I've spoken with some artists who've said they've got a lot of pushback from their labels on this.
I understand that, though.
Yeah. So what would your take be on that?
Well, every situation is different, and I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all anymore in the music business. There used to be, one contract was pretty much the same contract everyone had, back in the 70s and the 80s, and, how you made your records was, well, you went into a studio with a producer and engineer, and, now it's complete anarchy. You do whatever you want, and I think that's really important. The downside is that there's so much music out there already. I mean, the DJs and the presenters and the journalists and the writers, also a very important part of our business, are already not getting paid, really. Yeah. Swamped in music that they have to review and try and find space for it, and it's just physically not possible to review it all. I mean, there's 2 reviews in The Guardian, 2 music reviews in The Guardian per week. I mean, how many records get released per week? Used to be, there's
and
2
are they album or single?
Album reviews.
Right, okay.
2.
Yeah.
I mean, it just beggars belief. And there used to be a lot more. Financial Times, there used to be a lot more. Now there's only 2. So everything is like getting smaller, but the volume of music that's being produced is increasing. So from a label's perspective, if they've only got a certain amount of weeks, months in the year where they can release music, I mean, for a small label like mine, because I've only have a certain amount of staff and a certain amount of artists, I have to stagger it. I can't just be putting records out every 5 seconds, or else they would just get lost. Yeah. And the other issue is the old-fashioned side of the music business, which is like the radio and the press side. They still exist in very formatted ways. So, for example, you have to send your album to the long lead press. When I say long lead, I mean Mojo magazine, Uncut magazine. You have to send your music in to be reviewed several months before the record comes out, right? And then you might not find out till the week of release whether it's going to be reviewed. Radio is very old-fashioned. You have to send your tracks to BBC 7 or 8 weeks before it's actually meant to be, before it comes off the playlist. It's very, very strange. Yeah. So if you're constantly feeding these people and these places, BBC, magazines, newspapers, blogs, with just a constant stream of new music, they'll just turn off. Yeah. They won't pay attention. They won't connect with it. So and that has a negative impact on the artists.
So do you see it as almost like keep your powder dry? Wait until you've got the thing that you want to go out with.
Listen, everything's different. You might have a band where you can see something happening incredibly quickly. They're phenomenal live. Everyone's talking about them. You go to the shows, they're packed out, lines down the road. Okay, something is going on here. If we dilly-dally and don't put something out soon, people will have moved on to the next thing. Right. So we need to be reactive and flexible and be able to release something relatively quickly. Whereas if you've got a brand new artist that isn't connecting with anybody, which is, of course, 99% of the things, they don't really have a social following as yet. They don't have many streams as yet, because how could they? Why would they? Yeah. You can't just expect to bang things out quickly without really much momentum being built and expect people to pay any attention.
Yeah.
So it really is horses for courses. You have to look at each individual thing and go, well, look, that's already bubbling away nicely.
Yeah.
We can afford to crack that out quickly.
Yeah.
This one, it's going to take longer. It might take a year.
Yeah.
So there isn't really one answer to that question.
Yeah, no,
it's like
of course.
a lot.
And so when you, back to what you said before about, having been an artist and you offering advice to new artists, is this the kind of thing that comes up? Is this the sort of advice where you have to...
Yes, and it's not easy. It's not easy.
Well,
I'm working with...
Maybe they don't want to hear it.
No, they don't. And especially the older artists who
Really?
maybe come to me now at this point in their career where they've, I don't know, maybe been on a major themselves and didn't enjoy the experience, have found out about Bella Union and thought, oh, that guy, he seems nice, we'll work with them. And then I may start having to say something that is a little jarring in the sense that, oh, I thought you guys were cool and we're up for just being whatever. And I'm like, well, yes, but if we put your record out in this month, it's going to get jammed up because that's the month everyone releases their record.
Yeah.
So I think it would be to the detriment of your album release, your career. So can we just wait a little bit? And some of them get a bit grumpy about that.
Yeah,
understandably. Yeah. I'm an artist. I get grumpy when someone says, no, you can't do what you want to do.
Yeah.
So as long as they're grown up enough to know that the only reason I'm saying these things is to help, because I don't want to get 6 months into the album campaign and then they go, why isn't anybody interested? And I'm like, well, because you put it out at an absolutely terrible time of year when I told you not to,
So is it often your job, if you got to be, is it like bad cop, bad cop? Do you get to be bad cop? Do you have to be the tough guy?
I don't look at it like that, but I look at it like, I'm just trying to be honest. I'm just trying to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
And the truth sometimes isn't what people want to hear. They want you to tell them that the record is fantastic. A lot of artists who are a bit older have released records for years. They're at that point where they're like, I don't care. I just want to put my music out, man. I just want to get it out there. So here's the 20-track album, and it's an hour and 20 minutes. And I may be thinking, I love it, but I think that might be an issue because who's got time to listen to an hour and a half worth of music anymore? And the artist may well think, I don't care, I just want to put it out. So you do have a commerce versus, artistic battle that goes on sometimes. I have it internally every day, every minute of the day.
Yeah,
because it's not just them I'm fighting with, it's my own self because I believe there's value in both arguments.
Yeah. Well, I would love to give you almost like an example of that. I've run into this from the AI tech world. Okay. Which is when we were training our AI, we trained a model called hit potential, where the AI could give you a percentage out of 100 likelihood that a song would be successful. And it was trained on 100,000 songs from the last 10 years. And so it would look at the features of successful songs and give you a percentage likelihood. And as we were playing around with this model, we sort of figured out that there ended up being some quadrants, right? There's like, a song with a really high score, 90% sure it'll be a hit. And then you look up on YouTube and it's got 1 billion streams. Well, guess what? Nobody needed AI to tell us that this is a hit. It's high streams, it's high hit potential, it's a hit. It's probably the latest Bad Bunny or Taylor Swift or whatever. No problem. We have no issues here. And then you've got something that's got a really low score and it's got really low streams. Well, guess what? This song's just not resonating with a large audience, a hit audience. And then you've got your sort of your upper right quadrant. I'm a visual learner. I'm picturing it in my head. You've got your upper right quadrant, which is a high hit potential score with a low number of streams. Now, this is interesting. Potential. That's what you have in this quadrant. But I wanted to tell you about this because the top left quadrant is my favourite. I refer to it as the Neil Young quadrant. And that's because it has a low score, but it doesn't matter because it'll be a massive hit anyway. And my husband is a huge Neil Young fan. And Neil Young did this session with Amazon where he just recorded a bunch of songs live. And you can hear Neil Young dragging the mic across the floor to pull it towards him. They've not edited that out. The guitar has not been tuned. It's totally out of tune. And he's just shouting away, singing his songs. And it's one of the most audibly difficult pieces of music to listen to that I've ever listened to. But Neil Young fans love it. They do not care. They're obsessed with it anyway. So I do think for some artists, And Neil Young's my example, but I'm sure there are others. And maybe these are the older acts, the legacy acts, where do they have a fan base that's just so passionate they can do whatever?
If they do, then that's absolutely fine,
Right.
because they'll cope with the the swings and the ups and the downs of it all. Because over a career, it will balance itself out, and all they want to be is authentic, and that's
Right.
what their fans want them to be, and
Yeah.
that's what I want them to be too. But as I say, it doesn't always work like that. Sometimes a big hit is not immediately obvious. I mean, what could I cite you as an example? Well, okay, so Beach House, one of our greatest artists, signed them in 2006. Still work with them to this day. They're on their what would be their 9th album, probably making it right now. So about 2015, they recorded an album called Depression Cherry, which came out, absolutely beautiful record, and it did about the same as most Beach House records. They've got a really cult fan base, pretty big around the world. In 2021, perhaps 2022, 7 years later, after the record came out, one of their songs, and this wasn't to do with a TV show or a Netflix show, a movie or anything like that, it just happened, actually partially through TikTok. One of their songs just started kicking off on Spotify, going from the normal 10 million streams. They stream very high as an indie band. They stream very high. Went from sort of 10 million to like 100 million in just a couple of short weeks. And we were sort of trying to discover what it was that was kicking that off. Saw that there was this post on TikTok where somebody had had a heartbreak, posted a little video of their heartbreak with this song as the sort of soundtrack to that heartbreak. Now, I don't know if you ever go on TikTok. I'm not really a TikTok user, but the music that's on there, they're very short clips.
Yeah.
You don't listen to the whole song, you just listen to a tiny bit of it. So what was happening was everyone that then broke up with anyone after that ever on TikTok would use exactly the same piece of music, and it just became this sort of viral sensation.
Yeah.
It's a song is called Space Song, if anybody wants to have a listen.
We will
check
link
it out.
to it because now I want to listen to this.
Well,
clip
it is
as
a fantastic song, but at the time, no one was saying that's a hit. Your algorithm, your hits AI would most likely not have picked that up, is what I'm saying. So some of these things can just happen very organically and very beautifully.
Yeah.
I mean, that song is now almost 1 billion streams.
Wow.
From a couple of years ago, it was at its normal 10 million.
And that's fascinating as well, isn't it? Because there was that, I've heard of this a lot, a viral moment on TikTok that then does translate into people going and looking up the full thing. Of course, there's probably a percentage of people who they just experienced that 30-second clip and that's it. But that it's also then led to...
Well, there's 1 billion of them.
Yeah.
Have come out of TikTok and gone into Spotify and listened to it on Spotify. I don't even know the numbers on Apple or on Tidal or on all the other places. Yeah. I haven't looked it up. But, that kind of thing, whilst it is related to tech, it is incredibly heartening.
Yes.
Because we've all heard, ever since Spotify came on the scene, that, these streaming companies were ripping everyone off, and... They are, but every now and then, when something beautiful like that happens, completely against all the odds, with no one spending any stupid amount of money trying to make it happen on TikTok for the band.
Yeah.
It's just happened. This wasn't the band didn't have a TikTok page. They didn't even know what TikTok was probably when it first started happening.
Yeah.
This has all happened because some kids loved the songs. And now their audience, and I can speak for this as well with Cocteau Twins, our audience is now bigger than it ever was before because of TikTok.
Right.
And it's all 18 to 25-year-olds.
Yeah.
That's only the Cocteau Twins audience right now.
And I guess it's been a long time since I was 25 as well, but every group of 18 to 25-year-olds will have their new way of discovering music. And if TikTok happens to be what it is right now, great for them. But, I remember... back when I was first getting into music, I had the internet. So I turned 40 last year. So I did have the internet from about the age of 11, and I'd go on music blogs, and I went on a music blog and I read a description of somebody just written what a Guided by Voices album sounded like. And I just thought, oh, that sounds like my kind of thing. So I went into, I think, the Virgin Megastore or something, and I just said, do you have the latest Guided by Voices album? And they said yes, and they gave it to me, and I bought it. And that was my discovery mechanism.
Well, of course, and how it's changed every decade or so. You know, before when I was discovering my music, there wasn't anything. There wasn't mobile phones. There wasn't internet. There was nothing. So the only and there was no tech, of course, because we didn't have tech. The only way to discover music was to go to a gig or go into a record shop, or listen to John Peel or listen to the radio. You know, that was it.
Yeah.
So I, of course, still have an attachment to the physical product because of the early experiences and working in a record shop. I'm fighting it a little bit right now because the industry is fighting it a little bit. It's so expensive to make. It's not great for the environment. You know, all the things that are telling me I shouldn't care about it still as much isn't working. Because I'm still buying as much as ever on Discogs. And
you know, I heard about a really cool company the other day that's making vinyl with waste denim. I'm going to send you the link afterwards.
I was thinking hemp the other day, but that will probably sound terrible.
I found out about it through South by Southwest conference. They have this innovation awards, and one of the companies was a vinyl manufacturing using waste denim.
Well, it's about time, right? Because you know, phones aren't still this size, are they?
Yeah,
you know.
And I think they're also making guitar parts with waste plastic, like scratch plates on guitars using ocean plastic and stuff.
Oh, yes,
and
sure.
I love that.
I do.
That feels like a real innovation to me.
Yeah, it's about time that vinyl wasn't made of all these terrible things that it is made of.
Yeah, but at the same time, vinyl is having a resurgence of somewhat. So
I don't know, is it though? I keep hearing that, but I'm not really seeing it in my area of the business. Yes, It is if you're Taylor Swift.
Right.
You know, or Adele, those are just selling stupid amounts of money, and they're taking up all the space in the pressing plants. So consequently, everyone that's trying to make 300 copies of their little punk record is struggling to get it done.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, the prices of manufacturing vinyl has risen enormously in the past couple of years since COVID. I mean, if this friend I was talking about wants to make his double album of 20 songs, you know, it's going to be in the shops for around about 45 quid. And I think that's just...
Will it have to be a double disc on vinyl?
Well, it will, because it's over so it's an hour and something, so it would have to be on 2 pieces of vinyl. That's what makes it expensive.
Right.
Having 2 pieces, a double. I'm always trying. That's what I say to the artist. Are you 100% sure? Would it not be maybe better to do
get it on one
a single? Well, you can't get it on one. You could make one 10-track record, and then next year another 10.
That's what I mean. Part 1, part 2.
That's kind of how to think about it, perhaps. But it's always hard as an artist to say to another artist, "No, you can't do that."
Yeah.
Because that's what major labels do, and I'm not that guy. I've put out so many records in my 27 years doing Bell Union where I probably thought, oh, it's a bit long. It's a few songs too long. But I've just thought, never mind. They'll just do it. Let them do it. Yeah. And then maybe regretted it a few years later when it didn't do very well. But
sometimes the only way to learn is to make the mistake.
Exactly.
So in terms of, so it sounds like giving that feedback to artists can be challenging, because no one wants to hear a no or a maybe or a slightly different from maybe exactly what they had in mind. But is that the part of the job that you find the hardest?
Oh no, I don't find that hard at all. I like it.
Right. Okay.
I really
almost
enjoy
that's part
it
of the challenge.
It's like, I think it is really enjoyable because it's you've got to tell them the truth.
Yeah.
And that's what I think is the important bit. And they can hate you for it, but it will only be temporary, because one day they will come back, or they always do. I might say, "You were right," you know.
Yeah.
And I know this happened with, not me actually, but I know that Jason from Spiritualize had a double record at one point, and I think his manager at the time said, it shouldn't be a double, it should be a single, and he really balked at it.
Yeah.
But then he sort of saw the light, and he released it as a single, and he, you know, I know he was super chuffed that he did, and then a year and a half later, he released the second one.
Right.
So it does work in some circumstances,
yeah.
But you know, you always have to think about it and say, look, when I do pass on my advice, I do always say, I'm not right.
Yeah.
I don't know that I'm right. You know, this is just my opinion. All I can give you is my opinion from my heart, and just say, my instinct tells me this record is a bit too long, and that maybe we should think about it in a different way.
Yeah.
But I could equally tomorrow get a double record from somebody and say, it's perfect as is, do not touch it.
Right.
I'm not saying double albums are out. I'm just, using
It's
certain
nuanced.
examples. You have to take it as on each case on its merit,
It's nuanced. Actually, I'm absolutely loving this conversation because the parallels between what you do in the tech world, when I raised investment for my company, I just so happened to have like 3 Dutch guys that invested in my company. And if I ever had an issue, should we hire more people? Have we hired too many people? I'd call the Dutch. That's what I used to say. I'm going to ring the Dutch guys. And the first one would say, you've hired way too many people. You're spending too much money. You should cut costs. The second guy would say, no, well, you raised all this money. You should hire as many people as you said you were going to. Hire them all now. And then I'd call the third one and he'd say, well, you're probably about right where you are right now. And I'd just be like, okay, so that wasn't helpful.
Yeah, totally confusing now.
I feel like quite often all I could do was just go on my own instincts.
You have to go on your instincts. And that's what I learned from a very early age doing this.
Yeah.
Because I don't know what sells. How would I know? I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't know. I don't know what gets played on the radio. I haven't got a clue. Whenever a band say, what should be our first single? I'm like, I'm going to absolve all responsibility to answer that question. That's why we have radio pluggers, because they're in there every day. They know the producers and the presenters way better than I do. Let's talk to them.
Yeah.
I don't want to, because I've been wrong so many times.
And this is what I would say with AI as well. If you give me 10 tracks, I could get the AI to tell you which should be the first single. But guess what? It can also be wrong. Yeah, very wrong.
Of course it can be.
And I think that's people who talk about tech too confidently. I think it's way more interesting the things that it gets wrong, that it doesn't know. But I do want to ask as well then, if Simon Raymonde from now, and you said you were 61, could go back to Simon when he was first starting out, Bella Union and in the band Cocteau Twins, what advice would you give yourself? Or would you say, that's not helpful? What advice would you like to give your younger self?
Yeah, that is an interesting question. I suppose I would say not to get too stressed out about things. I don't now, but I definitely did. When you start in your own company, and of course you're going to have things that don't go very well, especially in the music business. And there were 2 massive incidents around about, just before Fleet Foxes became huge.
Yep.
And another one maybe 4 or 5 years before that, where the companies that we were working with, the licensing labels and the distribution partner, they both went bust, leaving us with debts. They had 100 grand's worth of our money both times. So losing £200,000 in the early part of the 21st century was, in my business, like, well, that's the end. There's no coming back.
Must have felt catastrophic.
Yeah, it totally did. And I used to I had stomach ulcers. I used to get really stressed out about things.
Right.
But funnily enough, I don't anymore. I don't know what happened. Well, maybe it's because I met a really great woman and got married, and I don't drink and I don't smoke and I don't take drugs anymore. So I think that helps too.
A bit of healthy living.
Somewhat.
But also, you can't underestimate the benefit of a really supportive partner.
No, I cannot. And that's probably the biggest change, because I noticed when I just started relaxing about things and not... Because, if you're coming home to an empty house and you've got all these issues in your head and you can't really switch off. I'm not very good at switching off at all, ever.
Yeah.
I'm a 24-hour day person, and actually my wife is too. We're both in the business together, so... she comes home from work and then we just talk about it until we go to bed. So it's quite full on.
Yeah.
But just having that perspective, and the same for her, because I'm a bit older. So she may say, what about this? And I'll be like, well, no, you definitely don't do that. And then I'll say to her, what about this? And she'll say, no, that's daft. Don't do that. So it's nice to bounce
Having
off.
someone to bounce those ideas off. Because I don't know about you, but sometimes I'll have an idea and the second I say it out loud, I've already decided it's not a good
exactly.
idea.
It's the vocalising of an idea.
But if you never say it, it might just stay in there.
Oh, for sure. I mean, even
if
your partner's advice is, no, I wouldn't do that. Even if as I'm saying, I think I'm definitely going to do that, I will still definitely do it. But it's just having that sharing conversation is very
and
useful.
I'm very lucky as well. My husband of 14 years is my perfect counterbalance. He's a mathematician, he's very introvert, he's very logical, and absolutely the person I want to go to to raise my nonsense ideas and see if I get a sensible response, But also, I don't know about if you find this, but my husband feels things more deeply than I do, and I'm used to this in business. You get a lot of yeses, you get a lot of no's, right? Imagine as an artist getting signed, you probably get way more no's than you get yeses. And I'm used to no's. They don't bother me at all. But, I got a no the other day and my husband was like, all day he kept coming up to me going, I'm really annoyed about that for you. Oh, I'm really gutted about that for you. And I don't know if, you just get that support, don't you, from a partner?
It's beautiful.
Yeah. Well, so I did want to touch on as well, because I know you said it was a little bit early, but you do have a book coming out.
I do.
So is it all written?
Oh, yeah, it's all written. I'm actually
presenting
it to the retailers tomorrow. I don't know what that means. I think I've got to read a bit of it and talk to some
I've never been in the book industry, so I also don't know what that means, but it sounds very glamorous.
I doubt it, but it's in Soho, so who knows?
Oh, I mean, that is where it's all going on. So the book's written, and it's scheduled to come out later this year.
Correct.
And tell us a little bit about it.
Well, I would never have imagined I would write a book 5 years ago. So I'd done like a few articles for magazines. I did like a regular column for a mag, just like anecdotal stuff from, my forever years in the music business. I wrote a couple of pieces for Pitchfork and something for The Guardian. And I'd always enjoyed, anecdotal essays.
Yeah. Stories.
Yeah, stories from, and but I always thought musicians' books, they're like boring, like stories about drugs and all that stuff. And I just I don't want to do a kiss and tell book.
Yeah.
My band was always quite private. And there is a sort of, enigmatic quality to the Cocteau Twins, and people always find it a bit of a mystery. And I don't really want to sort of shatter that by, talking about all the mundane things that we did just like everybody else, So I decided that probably wouldn't write a book.
Right. And we're talking like a memoir style book.
Yes, that's what it is. But when we got to our 25th anniversary as a label, I was starting to receive lots of invitations to, do a sort of hosting of we're going to host you to talk about your 25 years at running the label, and talking to John Robb from Louder Than War. Or, lovely guy, and going here and going there and having a chat, and for like an hour like this, talking about the label. And all the time people come up to me and go, gosh, you've got so many amazing stories, you should write a book. And I'd always just like, no, don't be daft. And then I met up with Warren Ellis from Dirty Three, who's obviously, of course, now incredibly successful composer with Nick Cave, and a beautiful person, lives in Brighton, near where I live. And I met up with him just after he'd delivered his book, Nina Simone's Gum, which is an extraordinary book.
Right.
If you haven't read it, it's just phenomenal. And it centres around this sort of event where Warren and Ellis went to see Nina Simone at the Royal Festival Hall. And when she went up on stage, Warren noticed that she'd stuck a piece of chewing gum under the piano. And Warren was sort of, I don't know, he just sort of got obsessed by this piece of gum. And at the end of the show, he kind of sneaked up on stage while all the crew were kind of packing down, and he went and grabbed this piece of gum. So this whole thing has sort of become like this totem in his life. And I just thought, what a lovely story that is. What a great idea. And he like me, had said, I wouldn't like to write a book. I'd never had any interest in it at all.
Yeah.
So after meeting with him, I just sort of thought, maybe I shouldn't be such a pussy about it, and I should just try writing something.
Yeah, like though that I love that story. I love that story about the gum, because it doesn't need to be, who are the most famous people I've ever met and who are the big stories and a big old chapter about Bowie and what have you. It can just be the nuances that made it special. Yes. And I feel like that would be very in keeping with Cocteau Twins.
Yes, it is. And, my life isn't just all about my own experiences either. I've got, my father was a successful musician in the 60s. He wrote songs for Dusty Springfield and arranged for the Walker Brothers. And he had a fascinating life, died very, very young. And I wanted to talk about his life in my book, because his influence on me was significant. So that was a big part of the book. I wanted to highlight his career as much as talk about my own.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of stuff about my dad in there, and that whole era of Dusty and working with Bowie and the Walker Brothers. Fascinating stuff for me, just as a music fan.
Yeah.
And then obviously joining a band like Cocteau Twins, and then there's a lot in there, right? There's a lot of stories, and then 25 years of running your own record label.
Yeah.
Actually, it's quite funny. I'd written about 30,000 words, and it felt like a lot to me.
Yeah.
I couldn't think of anything else to write.
Yeah.
And I sent it to the publisher, and I was like, okay, I think I'm done. And he was like, how many words is it? And I said, oh, it's 30,000. He went, yeah, you're going to need like 100,000 for a book. And I was like, oh, okay. That's 3 times what I've already got.
Yeah.
Okay, so I went on holiday with my iPad.
Yeah.
Just sat on a beach typing for a week,
Right.
solidly, didn't do anything else.
Yeah.
And then I got up to about 60,000, and then just slowly got into this rhythm. It's a bit like, I don't know, athletes where no, I'm not an athlete, but athletes where you have to get into the repetition of it to get fit. It's a bit like that with book writing.
You have to exercise the writing
Yeah, you
muscle.
have to write every day
Yeah.
for a certain period of time. So I would get up at like 6 o'clock in the morning. I'd go for a long walk, about a 2-hour walk, get to a cafe about 7 or 8 miles from my house, sit in the cafe with my iPad with my headphones on and just write until about 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah.
Then I'd go home and get on with my label work. I
Yeah.
did that every day for about 6 months.
Yeah.
And then I had the book finished.
And so was there a lot of it? Because I think I'd be intimidated by the empty page as well. And how much of what you wrote was actually used? Or was it the activity of writing every day that meant you could then also cherry pick the best bits out of that?
Well, I haven't. Yeah, I mean, I've got too much. I sent them too much, right? Deliberately, because he said, "Well, don't worry, I'll edit it." The editor is a one-man band kind of thing. He did Mickey Brainey's book, 9/8 Publishers. Lovely man called Pete Selby, and he just said, "Send me your book, and then I'll edit it, and then we'll do it." So I'm still waiting for him to send me the edit. So I don't know how much of it he'll have chopped out.
Yeah.
Whether there'll be bits I'm precious about. I'm trying not to be precious about it.
Yeah. But that's great having an editor with fresh eyes, though.
Yeah, I think so. Because I'm not a writer, do you know what I mean? I'm just a musician with some stories.
Yeah.
So I don't care, really, because he knows best what makes a good story and what, if I've written a load of bits that's just dull.
And how to hang it together so it all
Yeah, well, I've done that bit.
Nicely.
I'm pretty sure, because that was the hardest bit, is like how to tell the story.
Yeah, without jumping to...
Without going backwards and forwards
the
and people
label
going,
now
what's
and the
going
band
on?
then,
Hold on a minute. That can be quite confusing in books.
Yeah.
So it starts off with a very important event, which I will not reveal in this podcast because otherwise that
cliffhanger
will render the book promotion somewhat redundant. So
we got to save a little something.
Got to save a little bit, yeah. So the book starts off with that revelation, and then it's sort of the centre point of the book. Yeah. But it's dealt with quite early on for a number of reasons, which will become apparent when you read it.
Well, without giving anything away, I know you just talked about your dad and your dad being a songwriter and a musician. Is that where you get your talent from?
In other words, is it genetic?
Yeah. Is that how you think about it?
No. Well, I don't know. I've never thought about it too much because he was a trained musician and I wasn't. I was like self-taught, like punk musician. I was 14 when the Sex Pistols came to town, so that sort of influenced my attitude to life and also my attitude to making music. I'm very much just like, I just plug it in and just get on with it. Doesn't matter what it sounds like, just as long as I'm enjoying it. That sort of attitude, get up on stage and just have some fun. So he was completely different. He went to Trinity College of Music and he was like a prodigy, and he was arranging music for some of the greats in his 20s and 30s in London, in Soho, where I'm off tomorrow, weirdly enough. So such different life experiences. Yeah. He was playing piano in a jazz trio on the Queen Mary in the 50s, going to New York from Southampton, getting out in New York and going to watch Miles Davis, and he had. But for me, I was going to the Marquee and seeing The Cure, or going to the 100 Club and seeing the Pistols. You know what I mean? I had my experiences like he had his. Yeah. So I think there's a parallel, although it's a bit of a stretch.
Yeah. Well, I was just thinking as well, and I only think about it because so I used to play in an all-girl punk band.
Oh, nice.
Back when I lived in London when I was in my early 20s, and we were shit. I will say that now. There's a reason why I am not a famous musician with a record out on your label. Because I just don't think we were very good, but we loved it. It didn't matter. We were just 3 girls, 3 instruments, up on stage, shouting our heads off at the Camden Underworld. That was the dream. And it was all about playing live. I could never record in the studio. I can't play to a click. Never could. Don't even like the sound of my own voice on record. But it didn't matter. It wasn't about that.
Yeah.
But my brother is an insanely talented musician who also played aboard cruise ships.
Did he?
He had this he's a drummer predominantly, and he's so good. He can do anything. Just as soon as he picks up the instrument, he's just good at it. It's
annoying.
It's annoying to be his younger sister, one of. And he did this cruise that was New York to the Bahamas and back, a 7-day. Wow. And he just bounced back and forth like that, just playing the drums aboard the cruise ship.
Job.
But then we look at the rest of our family and there are no other musicians. So I think, like you say, maybe there's a tenuous link. Maybe there's a little bit.
Maybe my brother is in the business. He's at a completely opposite end to me. But he I don't think he would ever really played music seriously. Maybe he played guitar a little bit for a while.
If he's at one of the majors, we're going to have to walk back our comments on.
He isn't.
Good.
He has worked with them, but
we've all worked with them.
He's on his own.
Good for him. Good for him. So I'm very excited about the book, and we'll definitely be including a link up to that so we can and I'm going to read it as well. And my expectation now is it's not The Dirt by Motley Crue.
No,
it's the opposite.
Well, no, it's going to be worse than that.
Really?
Yeah, it's got every bit of grime in there. No, it hasn't. No, it's got nothing.
I feel like the music industry in London in the early days, you probably could write that book.
Yeah, but it's boring.
Yeah.
I know drug taking seems very glamorous when you sort of looking at it from a different perspective, but it really is very dull. And I say that as somebody that's taken a lot.
I was only ever a punk rocker. I was big on the booze, but never anything else.
Yeah.
So you can't stay awake past 1, 2 a.m. if you've only had a few beers, I'm afraid. So I am quite boring in that way. But also as a 40-year-old, I'm lucky when I lived in London, I used to go out 5 nights a week. Now, if it's 5 a year, that's a lot.
Yeah, I always found that I could, when I would stop doing everything when I was in my kind of late 30s, I still found I could go out and stay out later than anyone else. Sober. Which I found quite interesting.
Yeah.
I could just stand there while they're all talking nonsense till 4 o'clock in the morning. I'd be like, totally fine the next day.
You would tolerate it because I hit a certain point, usually around 10, 11 p.m, where the nonsense levels got too high. And, they're drunk people talk in circles and they talk a lot of nonsense. And I think, God, that is boring.
Oh, it is.
Yeah.
I mean, in my 30s, I still felt a need to hang around and just make sure they all got home safely. But now I'm like, would never go out into that environment now. I need to steer well clear of it.
Yeah. Just going to stay home. That'd be much more interesting. Brilliant. So I just wanted to sort of end on a couple of questions focused on the label and the artists that you work with. And I just wonder, of the artists that you've signed, Beach House, Fleet Foxes, what are you looking for in those artists? What still gets you excited about the new artists you come across?
Well, it's always the same. It always has to be like something special in the music that just does something to me more than just, yeah, that's cool, that's a good piece of music, I like it. Because there's millions of those tracks every day. I can hear something and go, oh, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Even something that isn't a genre that I like, I can still appreciate a good song, good pop song, good production. And I understand why some labels sign things like that, because they're signing it to be successful. I don't, as I already said earlier, I don't know what will be successful. So there's very little point in me trying to find something that might be. I've got no idea.
Yeah.
So I'm much better off finding things that excite me sort of internally, what is the word?
Physiologically.
Yes, that's the one.
Yeah.
Spiritually.
Yeah.
And mentally, if it sort of connects with me in more than just one way.
Yeah.
Doesn't have to. Sometimes it's good enough just to go to a gig and just feel thoroughly excited by something, so your adrenaline's pumping, and come back and you think, oh my gosh, I want to experience that all over again. But other times I feel like I need something a bit deeper than that. So I'm always looking for something that I haven't had before. I mean, you could argue that maybe I haven't achieved it yet, but that's what I'm looking for. And then when you find an artist, that does that to you, it doesn't matter whether it's got any potential in the wider world. I don't care, because I don't know, as I say. So I just go for it. Then I have to meet the people.
Right.
And really, really connect with them. If I saw a fantastic band who I thought was incredible and met them and didn't like them, I wouldn't sign them.
Fair.
Have to like them. Have to meet my team, and my team has to like. It isn't just all about me. Bella Union is certainly not all about me. It's a team of wonderful people that has been with the company, for between 10 and 20 years. So these are all friends of mine, and we all care about things deeply. So I have to feel like, even though I do find the bands, I have to feel like they like it as much as I do. Because I've signed bands before where I maybe was like, I don't care what you guys think, I'm doing it.
We've got to do it.
Yeah, because it doesn't matter what you think. I know I'm right. And then it flops horribly, and you're like, oh God, if only I'd asked for what their opinion was. So if they all feel similar, they don't have to love it as much as me, but I have to feel like they enjoy it and see some potential there, because that's really important.
Well, these are your people to bounce the ideas off again.
Exactly. And they have to represent that music in different places than I do. I'm just mooching around the world, just listening to music and going to see bands and listening to SoundClouds and all that kind of thing to find new music. They're the ones that actually put it into practice and have to take the music into, all these other places and get other people to get excited about them. I can only do so much.
Actually, you did just remind me, and I think this was why I'd reached out to you originally when we were chatting at South by Southwest last year. You said you do like a SoundCloud link.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's how, whenever someone says how, well, this is the other great dilemma for young bands these days. In my day, you put everything on a cassette and you sent it to your record label and you sent it to John Peel. That was it.
You pop it in the post.
Yep, stick it in the post, or go and wait outside Radio 1 and give it to John Peel by hand.
Yeah.
Really. And nowadays, every DJ wants, some people, like Mark Riley likes a WeTransfer file. Some like Box. Other people like Dropbox. Some people like SoundCloud. Some people want a CD. It's like there's so many. And how, as a young artist, if you are trying to do all this stuff on your own without a label, how are you supposed to know that? There's no book that tells you which journalists and which DJs like which format. So it's thoroughly overwhelming and confusing for young artists starting out. So I know one of the burning questions often is like, how do you help artists? Are labels important? Well, even just for this kind of information, yes, they are, because we can take that out of the equation. They should not be all spending all their day on social media, in my opinion. Artists spend way too much time doing their socials, posting this, posting that. I think they should be making music, experiencing life to write a song about, right? Not just sitting in the bedroom.
Because it could be massively distracting as well. In the same way that you've got your Box, your WeTransfer, all your different links, if you're also trying to keep up with Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, X, Twitter,
it's overwhelming.
You're trying to do all of it and you don't really know where your audience is or who you should be reaching out to. You can be the, jack of all trades, master of none almost.
Yeah. And I think that will probably change over the coming years. I think getting to that point where artists are like, I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah.
I just want to make music.
Yeah.
Having an awareness of it and which ones you feel most at home with, well, that's cool, And if artists want to post stuff on their own Instagram, great. But do they want to post stuff on Threads, on Instagram, on Tribal, on Telegram, on Facebook? You know what I mean? It's like, for God's sake.
Yeah.
If it's great, we'll find it.
Yeah.
But I'm 61. I'm not 21. So, this is an old man speaking.
And do you still get sent a lot of music?
Yeah, every day, every single day. But it comes in different places now. It used to be sent on email.
Yeah,
we would send a SoundCloud link on email. Generally, it was often a way, or sometimes through Messenger on Facebook when Facebook was a thing people liked. People don't seem to like Facebook that much anymore. So I tend to get most of my demos or links sent through my Instagram. through the messages on my Instagram, which
Right.
I do find, I don't know why, I just find it a little bit intrusive. I'm like, Instagram, that's my little moment where I watch dog videos at night before I go to bed. You know what I mean? I don't really want you to be invading my private moment, but that's just silly. It's a fine way to send things.
The nature of the evolving beast.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
I
try to have only certain profiles of work, like LinkedIn. That's just all work. But
I've never really used LinkedIn.
On my Instagram, you're just going to get lots of videos of me and my leaf blower. I'm big into gardening these days.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. Love a bit of gardening. Planted an apple tree yesterday.
Good for you.
So yeah, a little bit of mud on my shoes still. I apologise.
Oh, that's all right. I've got a dog in the garden that's very, very muddy.
Well, it's a slight U-turn, but my mum is a big fan of the Macintosh apples. That Macintosh Reds, they're called, and you cannot buy them anymore anywhere.
Isn't that weird that they're called Macintosh apples?
I think that's where they got the name.
Oh, really?
From the apple.
Oh, because the apple's the thing on the back.
Yeah. And there is a breed of apple called the Macintosh Red, and they're my mum's favourites, and you just can't really buy them anymore because apparently they're too soft. They don't travel well, so they don't make a lot of money. So I've decided to try and grow them for my mum.
Oh, that's a very sweet, lovely
This is
thing
what I
for you
want to do with my life these days. This is what's important.
Well, you see, yeah, I think we all need something that's a complete contrast to the thing that takes most of our brain space.
Exactly.
For sure I do.
Music to me is a busman's holiday. I don't spend a lot of time at home listening to music.
No, you see, I don't either. I don't have an instrument. I have a studio with my instruments, but I don't have an instrument in the house.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to come home and feel like, oh, I suppose I should play the guitar now.
Yeah,
and I don't play that. I obviously have to listen to some test pressings and stuff at home to check that they sound all right.
Yeah.
But more often than not, we listen to podcasts when we're making a breakfast or something.
Yeah.
Or hanging out with the dog. I don't really listen to music at home, but I have to have a release from music.
Right.
And my release from music is walking.
Nice.
Along the coast, where Brighton, where I live, and football. I go to football with my son every week, and that makes me very happy.
Nice. Who do you support?
I support Spurs.
Right. I support Darlington FC. We're a non-league side. We used to be in Division 3 when such a thing existed, but we're not very good. So that's me these days.
Leicester weren't very good, but then they won the league. So
there's always time.
There's always time.
There's always time. Brilliant. Well, I think we've come to the end of the podcast recording, and I know maybe much like your novel, we've meandered all over. We've jumped around.
Sorry about that.
No. It's entirely on me. But I've really enjoyed chatting, Simon. And I just want to thank you for your time, and I look forward to the book.
Thanks, Hazel.